On July 7th, the Department of Homeland Security announced termination of temporary protected status for Honduras and Nicaragua. And something like 72,000 Hondurans and 4,000 or more Nicaraguans are expected to lose their temporary protected status within the next 60 days or so. So the announcement was made on July 7th, and the actual end of the period for employment authorization will be around September 8th. That's when this large group of immigrants is expected to be completely out of status without employment authorization. So if you or someone you know is in this group of immigrants who are currently protected under temporary protected status, what can you do? The first option is what the US government hopes people are going to do, and that's self-deport, voluntarily leave the United States. But it's not always that simple, especially if you're from like Nicaragua. You'd be going back to a very unstable government where you might actually be persecuted for having previously lived in the United States. So, I mean, if you do decide to leave, the government is trying to incentivize people by making it a streamlined process. They claim that they're even going to give you like $1,000 to voluntarily depart the United States. So that's one option. Another option is to apply for asylum within a reasonable period of time of losing your status. So generally speaking, anyone who seeks to apply for asylum must do so within 1 year of entering the United States. But there are some exceptions, and one of those exceptions is if there are extraordinary circumstances. And something that could be deemed to be an exceptional or extraordinary circumstance is if you lose previously available immigration status, such as TPS, which is legally considered to be a valid non-immigrant immigration status. So within a reasonable time of losing your TPS, you could also apply for asylum. And what a reasonable time is viewed differently by different courts, by different jurisdictions. In my mind, I would love to see anyone who seeks to apply for asylum after losing TPS to do so within 1 month of losing TPS status, although there's certainly good arguments to be made that more than a 1 month period should also be considered reasonable under the circumstances, but it's a case-by-case determination. It depends on what's going on in your specific life and what would make that period of time reasonable for you. By the way, if you are considering applying for asylum, it's very important to not apply for asylum by yourself. One of the main reasons I made this immigration channel was to help people apply for benefits without getting scammed or wasting money on lawyers if it's possible. Asylum is not something you should ever apply for by yourself. Just look up the statistics on people who apply by themselves versus people who use lawyers. And the percentage of people who get approved doing it pro se by themselves is tiny compared to the percentage of people who do it with a lawyer. Asylum law doesn't make sense. It's not intuitive. You might think mentioning something about how your life is gonna be in danger if you return is going to be helpful, and it could actually be very harmful to your case. So even if you decide not to use a lawyer to submit the application, which I would not recommend, I definitely think every asylum applicant needs a lawyer, at least speak with a lawyer before you submit the I-589 application. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people who want to hire me to prepare their asylum application, and then when I look at their case, I see that they already submitted an application a few months ago and they just wanted me to fix it. And sometimes it's unfixable. If you say certain things in your asylum application, we can't now just go and unsay those things. And I'll give you guys a good example of this. I have a client who's from Haiti, and he came to my office asking me to represent him in his asylum proceedings. I asked him, have you already filed an asylum application? And he wasn't completely sure. He had used like a non-lawyer previously to just help him navigate the first stages of the immigration process. When I got a complete copy of his file, I saw that he did file an asylum application. And he said some things in that application that are going to be really difficult for me to try to fix now. Specifically, he was involved in the government in Haiti, which is a strong basis for seeking asylum because you need to show that you're seeking protection based on your fear of persecution based on your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in some social group. Political opinion can be closely tied to government affiliation. We might have some strong arguments to make there. But when I read his application, he basically just barely mentions that he was involved with the government and then focuses on the fact that a group of gangs, a group of criminals, shot at his house. They fired a weapon at his house, and there were a bunch of bullet holes in the side of his house. And when he found out about this, he decided that he needs to leave and he fled to the United States. In his asylum application, he says he doesn't know why they fired at his house. That was a huge mistake, because ordinarily, to be granted asylum, you need to prove nexus. That means you need to connect your fear of going back to your home country with one of those 5 protected grounds: your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a social group. So what could have been a strong application probably is going to end up getting denied, and the immigration judge is going to say, I believe you have a fear of persecution. I believe what you're saying is credible. I believe you're telling the truth. However, I must deny this asylum application because you have failed to establish nexus between your fear of persecution and one of the 5 protected grounds under asylum law. If he had used an attorney from the beginning, an attorney could have easily focused on facts that are more relevant to his case. Specifically, he has a fear of persecution. There's a political claim here. He was a part of the government. He has an imputed political opinion, and he has a reasonable fear to believe that he'll suffer persecution if he goes back to Haiti. If he had focused on the relevant facts and didn't just speculate about why, and he didn't just speculate and say like he doesn't know why they shot at his house, the case would have had a much stronger chance of success. Anyway, that's just a small example. I see this all the time. Do not submit an asylum application without at least speaking with an attorney first. If you've already submitted an asylum application without an attorney, that was a huge mistake. Speak to an attorney as soon as possible to see if your case is salvageable, to see if it can be fixed, or if there's a reasonable explanation for why you focused on certain facts instead of other facts. Because after all, there could be 10 different reasons why you're afraid of returning to your home country. You're not going to know which ones to focus on unless you have a really strong understanding of asylum law. The third option that I think some people who are losing TPS might have is to apply for family-based immigration benefits. If you have a spouse who's a US citizen, or a child over the age of 21 who's a US citizen, or possibly some other family relationships with permanent residents or US citizens, you might be eligible for adjustment of status. You might be eligible for something called consular processing, which would require that you depart the United States and then re-enter as a permanent resident. But both of these options, if they are available, are probably better than the alternatives, which is losing your status, going home with nothing after voluntarily self-deporting, or even applying for asylum. And by the way, you can apply for asylum and do family-based immigration at the same time. I have a lot of cases like that. So if you think you would benefit from any of these options, or you're losing TPS and you want to speak to an attorney to see what your options may be, I'm your guy. You can find my information in the video description below. My name is Puyan Darian. I'm an immigration attorney licensed in New York, and I handle immigration cases nationwide. If you need any assistance whatsoever, you can find my information in the video description below, and I'll see you guys next time for another video.